Gains from exchange and gains from specialization. Exchange and specialization are two components of international trade. So, gains from exchange and gains from specialization are the two components of gains from trade. So, gain from trade can be classified into gains from exchange and gains from specialization. So, both nations involved in international trade will be benefited from specialization and exchange. So that is the basics of international trade. So international trade will happen between two nations when both nations will benefit from specialization and exchange. So let's look into the details. So what does the gain from exchange mean? So gains from exchange mean that the nations exchange goods with each other when they expect to gain. That means that the commodities will be exported, commodities will be imported. So that is the case of exchange. The commodities will be exchanged. So nation 1 will export some commodities to nation 2 and nation 2 will export some commodities to nation 1. So this is the exchange of commodities. So both nations will gain, then only they will be engaged in international trade. Second is gain from specialization. So not only the exchange of commodities but also the specialization will uh, make them able to gain maximum of international trade. So what does that mean? Gain from specialization mean, so nations should specialize in the production of the commodities on which they have the lowest opportunity cost or on which they have the comparative advantage. So comparative advantage will drive the international trade according to the classicals, and economists later on also confirmed the comparative advantage, impact of comparative advantage on international trade. Uh, Similarly, the nations will specialize in the production of the commodities on which they have the lowest opportunity cost. So they should always look for lowest opportunity cost should always kept minimum as much as possible. So when opportunity cost is greater, that means they are making loss, they are giving up more amount of money for earning less amount of money. So opportunity cost should be kept minimum as much as possible. That is the comparative advantage theory. So comparative advantage theory always argues for specialization. So both exchange and specialization are the two components of international trade. So let's look briefly why nations exchange. We already know that exchange is the commodities being exported and imported between nations. So nations exchange commodities each other. So only when both nations or both parties gain from trade, then only they will import and export. So export sector will improve when some commodities are exported from one nation, export sector will be benefited, gdp will grow, more and more employment opportunities will be generated. Similarly, the import of inputs will also promote the production sector of the importing nation as well. Similarly, the import of finished goods to will be done to facilitate the welfare of the people when they are able to consume those finished commodities. So nations are keen in exchange of commodities between each other. Then second component is specialization. Let's look why nations specialize. Why nations should specialize according to the comparative advantage theory. So not every nation is efficient in everything. not every nation is efficient in producing every commodity. It is not almost impossible. It is not almost no possible. It is not possible almost. So nations should focus on certain sectors on which they have the comparative advantage or on which they have the lowest opportunity cost. They should always keep the opportunity cost a minimum. When opportunity cost is greater, that means they are giving up a greater amount of money for lower amount of money. So that is not a rational thing. The so specialization will help the nation to produce the commodities at lower cost. That means the economic efficiency is obtained when nations are specializing on certain commodities on which they have the comparative advantage. Otherwise, the production cost will increase, the commodities prices will be increased, so economic efficiency will not be ensured. So that is the reason for the argument for nations should specialize. So let's look an example of trade between the United States and Canada on the trade of strawberry. So let's look why specialization is needed in case of the trade for commodities through the example of strawberry. Suppose United States can produce more strawberries than Canada with the same amount of resources that Canada uses. That means the United States has the absolute advantage in the production of strawberries, as they have the lowest cost uh, needed, lower cost needed to produce the same amount of strawberry. So US has the absolute advantage compared, and the Canada doesn't have the absolute advantage, but the United States has got the absolute advantage in producing strawberry. So, but the concept of opportunity cost has to be taken into consideration, and the comparative advantage theory should be taken into account, and not the absolute advantage theory. Suppose in order to produce that much of strawberry, the United States has to give up more amount of money, so they have the opportunity cost when they are, suppose they are utilizing 100% resources, 100% factors are employed. So instead of employing laborers and capital in the strawberry production sector, they can utilize their resources for the production of some other sectors, other commodities on which they can earn more amount of money. So they have the opportunity cost, they have the greater opportunity cost. So when that opportunity cost is greater than the amount of money received from strawberry, so they should specialize on the other commodities, not on strawberry. So even if they have the absolute advantage, they don't have the comparative advantage compared to other sectors. They don't have the comparative advantage on strawberry. So Canada should specialize on strawberry. United States should specialize on the commodity on which they have the comparative advantage or on which they have the lowest opportunity cost. Here the opportunity cost of producing strawberry by the United States is greater. So when that is greater, United States should not produce strawberry, and they should specialize on other commodities, not on strawberry. So it should be left to Canada. They may produce it as they have the comparative advantage on strawberry. And so this is the situation for the need for specialization between two nations. Here we are going to look at diagrammatically the gains from exchange and gains from specialization. Let's look with the help of a diagram. Here we take an example of nation 1 only. So nation 1, um, the trade, the production, consumption, and trade of nation 1 of commodities X and Y are given in the diagram. Um, so, first, suppose that nation 1, for some reasons, are not able to specialize in commodity X. So, they are not specializing in commodity X. Um, Commodity X is partly produced and partly imported by nation 1. Here we are going to look just on the trade of nation 1, not on nation 2. So nation 1 is not specializing in X. So commodity X is partly produced and partly consumed, partly imported from the rest of the world. So let's look at the first point, that is the point A. So at point A, 50 units of X and 60 units of Y, commodity Y, and 50 units of commodity X and 60 Y or 60 units of commodity Y are produced by nation 1, and at the same time the level of consumption is a bit higher, that is not on A, that is on T, when it is tangent to the indifference curve 2. So at point T, the nation 1 is consuming 80 units of Y and 30 units of X. So here the 20 units of X is um, exported. That means at point A, 50 units of X is produced, but they consume only 30 units. So the rest 20 units will be exported to the rest of the world by nation 1. Similarly, at point T, they consume 80 units, that is the excess of their production level. Their production level is just 60 Y. So the rest 20 Y will be imported. So 20x is exported for 20y. 20x is exchanged for 20y. Um, that means 20x is exported by nation 1 and 20y is imported by nation 1. This is the case before specialization. Let's look the case after specialization. So after the specialization, nation 1 produces almost entire global output of commodity X, that is 130x. So the entire global, almost entire, nearly entire global output, 130 units of X, commodity X, is produced by nation 1 as they concentrate, as they specialize in the production of commodity X. And at the same, that is happening at point B. So at the same point B, they produce only 20 units of Y. So at the same time the consumption level is not is different. It is on point E, when the it is tangent to the higher indifference curve, that is the indifference curve 3. So at point E, 70 units of X and 80 units of Y is consumed by the people of nation 1. But at the same time they are just producing 20 units of Y and 130 units of X. So 60 unit of X will be exchanged for 60 units of Y. So 60X is exported and 60Y is imported after specialization by the people of nation 1. That means nation 1 gains from specialization as the people are able to increase the consumption level and the trade has also increased. So this is the gain from exchange and specialization. The gains from exchange just means gains from export and import between nations, and gains from specialization means the benefit received for the people of the nations engaged in the uh, in the trade, in the production and trade of the commodities after the nation um, is specializing in the production of that commodity. So the specialization should be determined by the comparative advantage and opportunity cost. They should always choose the commodity on which they have the minimum opportunity cost. So the gains from exchange and gains from specialization are the two components of gains from trade. So the trade will happen only when both parties are benefited. So that is the basics of international trade.